had the honor, and it's an honor to speak, and I've had the honor to speak a few times, and I approach these talks with a sense of reverence. It's not a small thing, and I've had the opportunity to talk about some really cool stuff that's really important to me that I don't really get to talk about a lot in my normal life. Things like personal sovereignty, forgiveness. You know, I see forgiveness as a ninja Jedi superpower. Was able to give a talk about love a couple of weeks ago. And with each talk, it's getting a little bit easier. Usually I come in here and I feel like I've died 1,000 deaths preparing a talk. Last night it was only like 527 deaths. And so today's talk's going to be fun, and it's going to be poignant, and it's going to be real. And we're going to be able to see a clip from The Sound of Music and talk a little bit about Maria, who's always been a kindred spirit of mine. But today's talk is on will. And these talks on love and will and the powers, you know, these are words. These are concepts. And sometimes words can be clumsy. I feel so grateful, and I'll remind myself with my gratitude practice about what a beautiful privilege it is to be alive right here now. At this juncture of time and space in human history, it's a privilege. I think about my forefathers who were peasants and farmers and soldiers who plowed the same 40 acres their whole life and died from impacted molars when they're in their mid-30s. And I live in a time where not only do I get to be literate, but I have access to a wealth of information that's been recorded throughout human history that I can Google and look at. And as I work, and I've been working a lot lately, I work at night, and I'm able to listen to tunes or whatever I want. And I've been able to look up and listen to programs on the concept of will as I've been working. And the idea of will is broader than any word. It's bigger than any one definition. It's more nuanced than you might think, but we'll start at the basics of will. So will, the desire, inclination, or choice of a person or group. The faculty of wishing, choosing, desiring, or intending. Here's another one. Will is our ability to choose, decide, command, lead, determine, based on our senses, thoughts, feelings, belief. We use will to make life-enhancing choices or not to make life-enhancing choices. An overdeveloped will can create folks who need to have their own way all the time and exhibit a my way or the highway attitude. Overdeveloped will can demonstrate a stubbornness and difficulty with change. An underdeveloped will, on the other hand, results in us being indecisive, wishy-washy, unable to make decisions. Charles Fillmore, one of the founders of Unity, wrote in The 12 Powers of Man, "The will moves to action. The will moves all the other faculties of the mind into action. In other words, will moves all other powers to action and is sometimes called the executive power of the mind. Will is what activates all the other powers. We're all born with a will. It's something that's ingrained in us. It's innate. If anyone's had children or worked with children, they'll notice right around 2 years old, a baby will develop some autonomy. And then all of a sudden, they know what they want, and it's different from what you want. And I remember my younger son, Lauren, had a really strong will. You could throw in obstinate and stubborn in there too. In fact, we started calling him Lauren, I don't want to, Gregory. Because that's pretty much all you ever heard is, I don't want to. And I remember asking a seasoned mom, like, so these are the terrible twos, how long do they last? She goes, honey, they just start at 2. They don't stop at 2. And so hang on, time out. Imagine that each one of us were born these precious, innocent little babies. And we're growing up in a society with families and rules and customs, etc. And we get to discover our will about 2, And then for the next period of our formative years, we're trained to not listen to our normal will to fit into circumstances and situations. It can be confusing. I have my own take on will, and I'm going to share with you how the idea or concept of will really deepened in me. They used to call me Full Blast Billy, and I was pretty much hell on wheels. And I remember I couldn't wait to get to work, to start a business, to make money, to prove that I was worthy. That was really important to me. And I took a lot of pride on being able to grind. In fact, to be honest, my 20s are a blur. I bought my mom a car when I was 16. I came from a poor family, and I knew I didn't want to be poor. And I had these goals of, I always knew I wanted to be a dad. I always knew I wanted a family. I wanted to buy my own house. I remember living in shitty apartments and crappy houses growing up, and I did not want that in my adult life. I had a lot to prove. And I took a great deal of pride on being able to work like a Nazi. I would work 6 or 7 days a week. I would have employees. I worked and had my goal in mind, and I achieved those goals. And I really felt like I was something special. I felt like, I was a man among men. I was hard. I was tough. I was willing to suffer. And I could suffer. I mean, there are Olympic athletes who can't suffer like I could suffer. And I had a high opinion of myself. And you could say I was arrogant. You could say I was cocky. And I did things other people wanted to do, wish they could do. And I also started drinking more. And I drank more. And I drank more. And I became a righteous alcoholic. And it's what happens with many people who are alcoholics or who have addictions or who become obsessive, other things start to fall off. And I slowly started to lose all the things that I had gained. And I had 2 sons, and I used my, will is we have a definition here which to me now is tongue-in-cheek because the idea of will is so much bigger than just the executive power of our minds. I ended up getting into a place where, I barely had a business left. I barely could spend time with my kids. And I felt a great deal of shame. I felt like a loser. I felt like a pathetic loser. I had just become my father. And to save my son's embarrassment of having a dad who was a bum, and to try to save everybody, the pain of my existence, I wanted to off myself. I thought the kindest thing for everyone would be for me just to end it. And I remember by this time I was squatting in a house in the Deschutes River Woods, and I was drinking Carlos Rossi out of a gallon jug, because I could get 2 or 3 good drunks out of a gallon of Carlos Rossi. And I was, planning on how to end my life. And I remember one morning waking up in this pathetic hovel and thinking, I just don't want to do this anymore. Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. And I didn't really know anything else. And so many times I thought, I'm going to stop drinking. And I really felt like I would, because I had proven myself over and over and over again. I'm just going to stop. And when I realized I couldn't stop, it was absolutely terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. And one morning I woke up, my mind was like a hall of broken mirrors. I was confused, and I prayed. And at this point, I didn't believe in God and a white-bearded, male, masculine figure in heaven who's watching down on me, judging me. All I knew was there is something else. I didn't create myself. I didn't create myself. If you look at yourself in the mirror, you will see a reflection of yourself, and something's looking out from your eyes. Where does that come from? There's got to be something there. And I just basically said, there's got to be another way. Please show me another way. I can't do this anymore. And I had this beautiful, cool wave of peace just blow through me. and I didn't want to drink anymore. It was as though my ego was broken. It was as though what I was sourcing my will from was broken and didn't work anymore. And at this point in time, my true will was revealed. And the first thing I wanted to do was clean my room, wash my clothes, clean out my car, and start healing. My innate will that was revealed at that time was one of just wanting to love. Instead of chasing things to distract me or take away pain and anxiety, I wanted to heal. You know, some of the signs of someone living within their true will is a sense of authenticity, because we're no longer trying to put on a face. We're no longer trying to impress people. It's a sense of just knowing what's right and wrong within ourselves. And this whole path that I've been on since then, of listening in and finding that true will within me, has led me to beautiful things that I would have never imagined for myself. We're going to watch a clip from The Sound of Music, and we're going to dissect this clip for a little bit and talk about just what it is to live within our true will.
Now, this is your new governess, Fräulein Maria. As I sound your signals, you will step forward and give your name. You, Fräulein, will listen carefully, learn their signals so that you can call them when you want them.
Lisa. Friedrich. Luisa. Kurt. Brigitte. Martha.
There's Gretel. Now, let's see how well you listened.
Oh, I won't need to whistle for them, Reverend Captain. I mean, I'll use their names. And such lovely names.
Fräulein, this is a large house. The grounds are very extensive, and I will not have anyone shouting. You will take this, please, learn to use it. The children will help you. Now, when I want you, this is what you will hear.
Oh, no, sir. I'm sorry, sir. I could never answer to a whistle. Whistles are for dogs and cats and other animals, but not for children, and definitely not for me. It would be too humiliating.
Fräulein, were you this much trouble at the Abbey?
Oh, much more, sir. Excuse me, sir, I don't know your signal.
You may call me Captain.
So what I love so much about that clip is you get a real contrast, because the captain is using his will to create order. He's playing his role and forgot that he's a father. And what I would really like to sound down into the recesses of our hearts here is that there's a truth within us that existed before any of these roles we've taken on. There is a truth within us that is calling us to awaken, that's beyond money and time and space and occupations, that many of us have lost the truth of our own joy, that spark of wonder that I believe is our true will. One of the things that we all fell in love with Maria for is her sense of innocence. She's just innocently being herself. Here she is with a captain in a state, and all she is seeing human beings. She's seeing a dad who's trying too hard. She's seeing kids who are trying to be good. And she's not intimidated. She's not willing to bend on this. She just sees what's right and what's wrong. And that's another sign of someone who's living in their right will. The right thing to do is simply the right thing to do. It's not because it'll look good in front of someone else or because it's profitable. It's because it's simply the right thing to do. The things about the powers, love and will, these things come from the inside out. These things are already innately written in the fabric of who we are. And some of the signs that we're living in our right will is life gets a lot easier. Life sucks when you're trying to make yourself do something that you don't like to do or you feel is yucky. When we're living in our right will and following that inner guide, life doesn't hurt as much. We weren't created to suffer. We were created to be joyful. We were created to love. We're born that way. And in a lot of ways, what unity is about, what spiritual direction is about, is returning to our own innocence. We heal the world by healing from the inside out. We're worthy of nothing less than that. And it's a freedom. It's a freedom. People find this freedom in the middle of prisons. People find this freedom in all different circumstances. I've had the same job for 34 years. I clean floors at night. And I have spent years hating it, and I've spent years trying to ignore it, and I've also surrendered to it. And now when I clean floors at night, I feel as though I'm taking what's walked upon and trodden down and making it beautiful again. I'm sowing prayers into floors when I clean them at night because I found a freedom within myself. This is a really beautiful book. It's called 7,000 Ways to Listen. And it's broken me open. I've started crying. So hang on, time out. A couple of my greatest desires in this life is not to become a curmudgeon. Another one is to be able to cry, to be able to weep, just to let those tears flow. I have not accomplished that yet, but I'm making progress. So I just want to read a section in here, if I can find it. Here we go. Okay. So let me try to do this justice. This is a quote from Abraham Herschel. I have no idea who this guy is, but it's a quote. It says, "We will not perish for want of information, but only for want of appreciation. What we lack is not a will to believe, but a will to wonder. Reverence is one of our answers to the present mystery." And I want to read, it's a couple paragraphs, but to me this is so beautiful. And if you can imagine, just listen innocently for a moment, if you would. So how do we learn? How do we lean in and listen to all that is not us? To all that is calling to the particular angel waiting to guide us more thoroughly into who we are born to be. While we can share insights, only you can discover this for yourself. I encourage you to lean into your own sense of the unknown, to intuit and to cultivate a personalized practice of listening. To where life is nudging you and calling you, I invite you to listen to the part of you that life is trying to awaken. That threshold might be waiting just beyond your smallest curiosity. Your life could change by picking up a stone and rubbing it free of the dirt that covers its blue vein, which somehow reminds you of a dream you've forgotten. It helps to remember how, in a field of no one watching, the smallest wildflower reaches its tiny root into the dark. It doesn't know, and at the same time, opens himself to the light it feels but can't see. And while the flower has no choice but to commit to this natural process, we as humans have a choice. Unless rooting and opening, unless listening to what is near but beyond, we will forego the soul's birthright to blossom. In very real ways, we're drawn to what we need to learn. Often it waits like a quiet blessing that we can easily ignore, or just as easily open to ourselves to, like the small wildflower. But for the soul to blossom, we must accept our deeper, humbler destiny. For the wildflower does not become rich or famous for blossoming. It doesn't live forever or become the greatest flower of all time. The wildflower's reward for trusting what it senses but doesn't yet know is to become what it was born to be, a flower whose inevitable place is realized in a small amount of oneness. As it joins with the elements that were there before it came alive and which will live on after its death, this is the reward for every seed growing in the dark with no sense of what it will become. As a soul on earth, this is all we can hope for, to feel the light and being of all time course through our veins while we blossom. I invite you to listen in and know that your will is ready to awaken and your life can take on possibilities never dreamed before, and that you're worthy of nothing less.